the way we have taken the approach is instead of trying to go in and say we're going to try to do a whole system-wide change right away, we went with a smaller, more of a micro approach to it, where we can show first, let's show value of it, and then we'll just continue to develop this and share the stories, and then share the data of how much impact it really is having, whether it's with our student associates, with our business partners, parents seeing the change in their student. I just had a conversation. Someone kept saying, well, what's the best time? And we wanted to show them really where the magic's happening. Is there a big event coming up? And we just tell them, well, the magic's happening every day. And the best way you're going to find this out is just come see it in action. It's an organic state. And you're going to see why this is such an important program. And it's so vital to the development of our high schoolers.
Hello and welcome to the Future is Clear Teach Like It's 2045 webcast series. My name is Scott Carr from CESA 2, and today's topic area is Design Sprints in Action, Connecting Career Readiness to Your Community with the CAPS Network. Joining us today is Ethan Wiechmann from Cedar Falls School District in Iowa. Let me tell you a little bit about Ethan. Ethan is an innovative educator and leader in career and technical education at Cedar Falls High School in Iowa. He is the director of the Center for Advanced Professional Studies, the CAPS program. He's been instrumental in transforming how students prepare their futures through the real-world project-based learning experiences. Ethan has over 15 years of experience in education, where he has dedicated his career to bridging the gap between classroom learning and workforce readiness. Under Ethan's guidance, the CAPS program at Cedar Falls High School has flourished, offering students unique opportunities to explore career pathways, develop professional skills, and engage with local businesses and community organizations. His approach emphasizes the importance of authentic learning experiences, problem solving, and entrepreneurial thinking. Ethan has also been instrumental in expanding the CAPS model through other school districts, serving as a mentor and a consultant to educators looking to implement similar programs. Ethan's passions for empowering students to discover their potential, prepare for student success, future continues to drive innovation in career technical education, making him a respected figure in both the education and business communities in Iowa and beyond. Welcome, Ethan. How's it going?
It's going well. That was quite the introduction, Scott. I'm not sure where you got all that information, but it was well said. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. I might have used AI to pull some of it together, but I had to do a little research on you and check you out. There was actually there was a lot more information it provided me, but I thought, man, who is this guy? This is really good.
Yeah, it made me sound awesome. Hopefully it didn't pull in my high school years. We might have gone the wrong direction that way.
Right. You and me both. But let me just share. I was able to meet Ethan. When was it? Start of the school year. I think it was when you and I got together and talked a little bit just through the CAPS program. And what I found really interesting is it was the very first week of the school year, and here you were already pulling together a design sprint with about 150 kids. And I just couldn't believe it. So I thought, wow, I got to get to know this guy better. I'm glad that we've been able to connect, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about what you do and keeping the connection with you. So how's the year started out for you so far?
Well, as you said, we had 150 kids. Our program doubled last year, from last year to this year. So we're serving roughly around 300 students within our Cedar Falls CAPS program, which is again roughly about 70% of our graduating class will get one of our experiences. Wow. So we had a tremendous amount of growth, and just like anything with growth, there's challenges that you need to address and overcome, but they're good things. They're good challenges, right? And so while we were thinking about our regular programming and providing quality profession-based learning experiences for all of those students, there was a lot of things that went into that. So we spent a ton of time in the summer preparing for our launch. So we can, again, our goal is to make sure every individual has a high quality CAPS experience so we can properly prepare them for their purpose outside of high school.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get where you're at, and why this area, this field, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, the career journey and the pathways are always an interesting one when you talk to people. And it's a great story. These are ones that we encourage all of our student associates in our CAPS program is to ask somebody about their career journey. How did they go from a 15-year-old themselves to where they're at today? And almost always it's not a linear path. Like there's very few times that we know exactly what we want to do. And I'm no different. My counselor, when I met with him for my senior exit interview in high school, there was the amount of career advising I got was, well, what subject, what do you want to do? I don't know. What subject do you like the most? Probably
Right.
math. You should be an engineer. Sounds good. And so I kind of went down that route, and fortunately, my stepfather convinced me to go to Ellsworth Community College for 2 years instead of going to Iowa State University right away for engineering. And in that process, I met a few different people and some mentors that walked me through about what's an engineering going to look like. And ultimately, I had my wrestling coach at college said, do you really want to be an engineer? Do you really want to sit behind a desk all day? And I know that's not what they do, so I don't want to
Right. Yeah.
insult any
No.
engineers on here, but uh, he said, but he goes, I think you'd be a really good teacher and an even better coach. He goes, I want you to think about education. And about 2 weeks later, I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I changed my destination to University of Northern Iowa, and I went there to get my teaching degree and play some rugby while I was at it. Enjoyed that experience, and ended up getting a math teaching degree for K-12 math education degree. And went down to West Branch, taught there for 6 years in math. That was in 2003. Came to Cedar Falls in 2009 and was a math teacher for several years here before I was approached to do a CAPS program. Um, which is a crazy story in itself. I was in a study hall, and my wife just had our third boy, and I was taking on head wrestling coach that year, and it was in December, and our principal came to us and said, hey, we'd like you to run this CAPS program. And I said, what is CAPS? And he goes, I'm not sure, but our school board wants us to run it. And we think you'd be a good guy to kick off an engineering strand for it. And I said, well, this will be good. Let me think about it. I was kind of looking for my next thing. I've been teaching math for about 14 years. And I said,
Yeah.
oh, let me look into it. And I said, well, I'll have the summer to prepare, go into the fall. Well, he goes, no. We want you to start it in January. In fact, there's a meeting on Wednesday, and we'd like you to come and learn more about it. You don't have to make a decision yet, but just come learn more about it. I'm like, Wednesday? Are you kidding me? Like, what? Or we're talking about at the beginning of the spring, we're going to launch some program and we don't even know what it stands for. He goes, yeah. So
Wow.
I show up there thinking I'm going to learn about it. I walked in, and the school board president walks up and says, Ethan, we're so excited that you're going to be the one that's going to take this program on. And from then on, I'm like, well, I guess this is already decided. I ended up meeting Nate Clayberg there, who was an economic developer. He was fired up about the idea. I learned about the program, and I knew, I was like, yeah, this would be pretty cool to be a part of. And so we learned in December, and we launched our first CAPS experience in January. Had a lot of work to do over the winter and over the Christmas break, and researching what is CAPS, and met a program. We went to Apex in Waukee and learned a lot about what they were doing down there, so we can incorporate um, some of their programming here, and we got it up and running. So and I've been here now. This will be my 8th year in this coming January. We
Wow.
started with 13 when I was that first semester, and we'll serve 300 this year.
Wow. 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 Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's incredible how fast things have gone in the last 8 years. Granted, I've have 3 boys, so that takes up a
Yeah.
ton of time too. But mostly, I love the work and the impact that it's having in the community, and just seeing high school students get invigorated about learning and about
Yeah.
investing
Right.
in themselves, and thinking about their future and the opportunities that are out there within our community. So it's been awesome to be a part of this program, and see what experiential learning, when it's immersed in a community, what type of impact it can have.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like you say, you went from a math teacher to into the position you're in now. And as you know, we've talked a little bit about this. Some of the work that I do, or the work that I actually do, is to help right? Help school systems, have in that transformational change shift. There's a need, for a shift in our educational system, as we know. But with that said, why do you, again, math teacher into what you're doing now, why do you see the need for our educational system to change?
Well, and Scott, I love how you pose this question because even in, and I think one of the reasons why I was an intriguing candidate to run the CAPS program was twofold. One, I have experience developing programs just with my uh, coaching background and starting programs from the floor up, right? So there's some of that. But the other thing was I was already pushing the narrative or the boundaries of what
Mhm.
mathematics should look like in the classroom, right? So I wasn't as focused on, there are some that feel like math is about memorizing a bunch of formulas. And I went that route when I early on as a math teacher, but then I soon found how detrimental that was for our students later on because a lot of students start to think that math is basically a bunch of magical formulas that are floating around. And if you're good at math, you're able to recognize which formula that you need to solve a problem. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Now there
Yeah,
are formulas, but there's math is very basic. If you get down to addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, if you have a true understanding of that, know how to solve problems, truly understand problem solving, you can apply that in a lot of different contexts. And so when I was doing my mathematics, when I was teaching math, I stayed away from memorizing formulas and more about just how do you construct a problem? What are
well,
different ways we can solve it? I did a lot of group work, group thinking on problem solving. It wasn't an individual. I always rearranged the desk. I mean, most of the math teachers liked them in rows
yeah,
and
right.
I would put them all into groups. And I said, no, let's collaborate. Let's solve this together because I felt like that was the real skill set that we should be striving for our kids. Because I figured if they can problem solve and collaborate and then communicate what they learned or how they solved a problem, those are skills that are going to be universal for the rest of their life. So that was the approach I was already taking in my math class. When they came out and said, okay, but now we want you to actually incorporate these skills, these durable skills in a real world setting in our community. I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty cool program that I could be a part of.
Yeah, I love how you say that. Um, Teachers stepping out of their comfort zone. In our comfort zone, right? We've been conditioned for a long time on, what school, the inside of a classroom, what schools really should be. We all lived it, we went through it, and so I really applaud you for, making that shift. Obviously, you saw the need and the reason. In what ways do you see the CAPS program itself being able to shift, mindsets of others?
Well, I think that it's an interesting thing with the mindset. Some of it's mindset and how you're traditionally trained within
Yeah,
your teaching program, but some of it is just the way our system is built right now, right? So if you
yeah,
think of standardized testing in general, while we put so much emphasis on that, and that's what gets reported in newspapers, and that's what state lobby or state legislators are looking at, and they want that quick data so they can say, our school's doing good. Should we fund them more? Where should we put our funding? And so to do that, we do have a lot of these assessments that are quick hitters and easy to come up with a solution or easy to recognize challenges or problems. Um, and so you're kind of stuck in this big, huge bureaucracy of, well, we could try to change things and do it at a large scale, but there's so many things that need to be undone.
yeah,
And then you
right,
have to inform everybody about it. And typically people got about 5 minutes of time to be able to understand what you're trying to accomplish.
right.
It's really difficult to do. And so I think I might have missed your first question or your second question here, missed the mark a little bit on it. You said, how do you exact change? it's it, the way we have taken the approach is instead of trying to go in and say we're going to try to do a whole system wide change right away, we went with a smaller, more of a micro approach to it, where we can show first, let's show value of it, let's show the impact and that it
Love
can
it.
be
Yeah,
done, right? And then we'll just continue to develop this and share the stories and then share the data of how much impact it really is having, whether it's with our student associates, with our business partners, parents seeing the change in their student. Um, And then once we started seeing that and seeing that not only was it having a big impact, that people involved in about it were having a lot of fun and really passionate about the
Yeah,
outcomes.
yeah,
And of course, you do that, then you're going to bring in people out of the woodwork that are like, "Hey, what are you doing, and how do I get involved?" And so we started doing that, but then we started inviting people to. We were a very visible program. Anybody, anytime. In fact, I just had a conversation. Someone kept saying, "Well, what's the best time?" We wanted to show them really where the magic's happening. Is there a big event coming up? And we just tell them the magic's happening every day.
yeah.
And the best way you're going to find this out is just come see it in action. It's an organic state. Uh, and you're going to see why this is such an important program and so vital to the development of our high schoolers. So, we started doing that. We brought in some different people within our school district, especially at our elementary level. We had some people that were really interested in doing some um, different things for their students, specifically around authentic learning type of experiences. We partnered with them. We started bringing our high schoolers as like big buddies and helping their
Cool.
sixth graders develop pitches and solve problems, do their design sprints, and help support that. And then that started catching. So now we've got a strong contingent of sixth grade where there's a whole authentic learning time for all sixth grade. And so throughout it, that started at one elementary with one person. And now
Wow.
it's implemented school district wide. And that's no small feat. I mean, we're not a huge community, but we serve roughly about 400 to 450 per class. And so to try to get everybody on the same page as a sixth grade, that's not an easy thing to do, but they see the value of it. So we got that rolling. Now we're talking about a junior high experience as we continue
Wow.
to build out a K-12 authentic learning scope and sequence.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I like how you say that in regards to the sample size that you start with. And I think that's really what we need to do in our educational system. But again, it goes back to what we're conditioned to do. And that is a lot of the times we find that new idea comes through our decision-making teams and we're easily pushed in a direction of this is what we want to do and we're going to tell you how to do it. And
Yep.
starting out as with a school, a lot of the times we'll walk in the summer and that's what we learn as our new initiative as a whole group. So I love the approach. Let's talk a little bit about what it is. I've got a general understanding of the CAPS network and the program itself, but tell our listeners, what is CAPS?
Well, you do have a general understanding, and Scott, it might be good. I'd love to hear real quick about all the different programs. I mean, you've got a large area that you work with. What are all the different varieties of experiential learning? I mean, real quick, you don't have to go too deep
Yeah,
into it that you're seeing or interacting with your school district. 'Cause I know you interact with a ton of school districts. So, what are some of those? Then I can dive deeper into CAPS. It might be a good lead
yeah,
in for that.
sure. We see our state has done a nice job with our ACP planning, that's academic and career planning, and along with that, they've provided us with some real guidance in regards to work-based learning, career-based learning, and work-based learning. As a guide that comes to our state. So I think the breakdown is that you look at that, you attempt to pull some of those things together within your own school system without the true guidance of whether it be a type of a program or support. Sometimes our CESAs will support districts in regards to that, but we'll see work-based learning at the level of engagement of school districts, reaching out to business partners within their communities. So we see a ton of that. We see a lot of networking in bringing guest speakers in, or we see a ton of work-based learning that will include tours of businesses. We'll see a lot of career fairs within our school systems. Things of that nature. A lot of that work I generally will see happening with career technical education classes more organically. It seems to be more of a natural fit. Other than that, we'll see it governed or organized through the school itself. If the school has a really strong ACP or CTE coordinator, you'll see more of these types of activities taking place within a school setting. The career explorations done a lot of the times through what we'd see as advisory opportunities within schools. We use the platform Zello, which is a strong platform when kids can understand and dive into it as a resource, right? So it's to me, I see it done very much when I get into schools. I see it done very much programmatically. It's it's in isolation sometimes or siloed. We see students that are taking advantage of it, that have the interest, have the resources to be able to do it, which I tend to see, where it'll create gaps then for those that really maybe need it, or need more of it. So we don't have a ton. We got a platform called Inspire Wisconsin that I think is pretty powerful, where it connects students to businesses, and it can be done regionally or within our state. But we're limited. We're limited
So
at the
tell me
front end.
tell me about that connection that Inspire does. When you say Inspire connects students with businesses, what's that relationship between those two?
Yeah, the businesses themselves will become members of the platform, which is an on-base type service, and students then can use that resource in a way through reaching out and making connections to those businesses, and really it offers work-based learning type opportunities, which could be anything from connecting with those businesses in a mentorship type of a process, or maybe doing a job shadow or a business tour, things of that nature. It's driven, though, I think sometimes these types of resources are driven, if they're not supported by, an educator or a structure of the classroom itself. It's driven by the student. And as you know, the student itself has to be highly motivated and find that intentionality in the relevance and the purpose behind it. So, as a lot of our structures and platforms or programs that we're able to offer, if you don't have the structural component of the educational system really, you know, having it built into their culture, again, it's going to create gaps for students versus, really having a holistic approach, for your system. So that's kind of what I'm able to do, is get in and bring it into the classroom, kindergarten through 12th grade. And we lean into then these types of platforms and organizations. Thus the connection with you and CAPS, right? I mean, it's okay. I see the high value in it, in what you're doing, but how can we bring that concept and even the program itself right into the classroom so teachers can embrace it?
Yeah, that's the golden egg, and what you just said right there is how do you
Yeah,
bring it in a classroom so teacher embrace it, and what components need to be there for it to be high quality experiences, right? And so
right.
there's some even inherent challenges even with bringing it into the traditional classroom, right? So uh, a big component of the CAPS program, that's why it's a junior and senior one at Cedar Falls High School, is that we actually take the high schoolers out and put them in the community, and we meet the businesses where they're at rather than trying to pull businesses within to our district, because obviously businesses schedules are busy, and
Yeah,
every hour is a billable hour, right? So if we can meet them where they're at, we're saving them time, which makes it less of a barrier for them to engage with our program. And I'm going to come back to that point. What I liked about what you talked about is like the culture and the holistic approach to this rather than the one-offs. You also talked a lot about yeah, the Inspire, and how a platform in itself looks great. But you said it's like you have to have a highly motivated student to engage with that, right? It's set up to be helpful. And the reality is a lot of our kids just don't have the durable skills, or not confident in them to go and take the initiative to go meet with a business on their own, right? And so some of it has to do with coaching and mentoring, and who's going to do all that work for every single student within the district, right? So that's, to your point, it's like if you're not doing a holistic approach, you're going to get, you know, hit or miss on who's going to get these experiences, who's utilizing the resources that we have. And again, there's just a lot of challenges around that, and then working with a busy school day schedule and what's already jam packed with all sorts of events and things like that. So uh, I think what you talk a lot about different components and about the continuum. So there's I look at this as a continuum, whether you call it work-based learning, authentic learning, profession-based learning,
Right.
career development. Some of those things, like a job shadow or a mentor or a tour of the company, those are all great things. When we're looking at that, it's like there's an entry level. That's what we would call like an entry level experience. So we're going to get you a job shadow, or we're going to get you a a tour of a business, and just start thinking about what careers are there. But it's more than just, again, finding what career you might want to do. It's also making sure that they have the skill sets to be able to be successful in that skill in
Right.
that career. And to do those, what we found is the more you can make things authentic and more real world, where it has an actual real world impact, the better the experience it is for the students, and the more and the deeper the skill development that they'll have. And so what we do with CAPS specifically is we take students out of the high school and we're going to put them, fully immerse them into a professional environment. Now, for Cedar Falls CAPS, because there's multiple CAPS programs in the network, they don't all operate the same way. That's the beauty of it. We have our core values that we operate under, um, but we are very much a project-based experiential learning program, uh, where we take them out and we bring them together as a cohort. So we're not doing one-to-one placements with businesses as like an internship model or apprenticeship model, but more of, we put projects up on a board, we put teams around, teams together, and then they select the projects from the board, and then we train them to go take on that project and manage that all the way through to the end and meet the
Wow.
goals and the outcomes for our business partners. Um, and so, along the way, we understand there's a big mantra that we say within our program is like, we have to provide value to our business partners or our program won't exist.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the beauty of our program, is because it is real world impact. This is actually something that they want done. The challenge with that is we have a responsibility to make sure that that product's worthwhile. Otherwise, they're not going to come back, because it ends up wasting their time. And generosity runs out. I think people in general in our community want to support education, but they also, as a business, have to keep the lights
Right.
on. They've got a lot of families that they have to support, employees, make sure they get their things done, and clients and customers that they have to make sure are satisfied. And so every hour they're engaging with us, if we're not bringing value back to that company, they're going to stop engaging eventually, especially when things get stressed out. And so we have somewhat of a pressure to provide value, but that's also where the beauty lies, and that's where our growth happens the most.
It's really, boy, you say some things that make a ton of sense as I'm sitting here going, okay, because again, as you know, and we've talked about here, is part of what I do is to go in and help schools evolve this, if you would. And what is the this? There's so much involved in that, but we do get to that point of how can we connect our communities and work-based learning, career-based learning to every classroom. And a couple of the components that you've talked about here, I never even thought about, right? The ability to understand and respect that the businesses are a business. They're in this to make money for what they're doing, and here we are knocking on the door saying, hey, can you help us out? And they're going to be, sure, we want to help, but we want this to be something, this engaging opportunity to be something worthwhile for our side of it too. How did you, because how long has CAPS been at Cedar Falls? And then how did you evolve? I'm sure you've got a network, a group of business partners that you lean into. How did that evolve?
Well, not real quickly at first.
Yeah,
To your point, Scott, we often in education, we're looking for handouts, not so much handshakes. And that's
good
something
point.
that we tried to change the mantra on. When we met with businesses, we literally said, look, we're looking for handshakes, not handouts. And as a business, we or as schools, we'll say, hey, do you want to sponsor this event? And do you want to donate this? Or will
Yeah.
you come in here and will you speak here? Or could you provide some swag or whatever it is for we come in for our career fair. I mean, to do a career fair, by the time you set everything up to make it worthwhile and engaging, you've got someone that's going to spend 8 hours of their day typically
Yeah.
preparing for it, going to it, coming back. And for what's the return on that, right? What are they getting out of that? Is that company seeing a potential future employees? Are they, how are they offsetting those costs? And again, those are nice things to do. But again, if we're not providing the actual value of it, it doesn't become a symbiotic relationship. And as soon as the first thing that things get stressed out or we have to cut something out in our day, we're the first ones on the chopping block.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's the other way around, you're providing some value that becomes part of their mission. And we've got some great stories of partners that did that, but it takes a lot of trust building. And
Yeah.
sometimes we want to go all in, and sometimes we have this attitude, well, you should just help us because we're education. Well, again, they're a business and they want to be helpful, but their main priority is to their customers and their employees. And so we just started off by talking to, we just find some early adopters, lean in our networks and our relationships. And Nate Klaber, who was part of it, did a great job of that. He was an economic developer, so he was well connected with the business and organizations within our community. And he started reaching out to some of his network and said, "Hey, we're starting this program. We'd love to talk to you about it. We're really looking for a few different projects that we could get students on and
Mhm.
help move that forward for you." So we talk a lot about, and this is pretty common now within work-based learning, but we ask them about, what's your 8, 9, and 10 on your list of things to do? So it's not
Yeah.
project critical. You don't necessarily need to keep the lights on, but it's something that's just been festering because you just have time and resources. Well, we got time and resources. We've got a group of hungry, energetic high schoolers that are thirsting for this type of opportunity to go make an actual impact within their community. Let's get a team on that. And so we started off with a couple projects. Our goal was not to have all the projects go swimmingly and perfect. Now that would have been awesome if it would, but I'd be lying if it didn't.
Right.
We didn't know what we were doing. We had a month. We were throwing things together. What we did know is we wanted to make sure that we created the right environment, a right culture of that. It was an actual professional environment where they were treated as colleagues, not as students. And we had the same expectations as far as how we evaluate them. We evaluate them as if they were a colleague of ours, not as a student. We interacted with them. We had the same expectations of them as we would of any of our colleagues. So we were very motivated to do that at the beginning, set the right tone. And then the other one was is we knew we just had to get one good story out. We had to have
Mhm.
to get one good project. And we were fortunate we did. We had an awesome project get off the ground. It was our step stool project with Crichton Engineered Metals, and it went really well. I mean, you could spend a whole podcast talking about the layers of that because it continues to keep feeding the ecosystem
Yeah.
that can happen when you're engaging with your community. So we got that one project, and then we just started telling that story to people and saying, "Hey, this is what could happen if you engage with CAF." So you could either get the value of the product that they're going to help develop and move something forward you may never have gotten done or gotten around to. Now we've got business partners that are doing it because they are wanting to be competitive. We got a lot of mid-major industries here, and they're going to these career fairs at colleges. Number one, the amount of students in their area that they need are dwindling. There's not as many available. Number
Mhm.
two, it's hard to recruit into Iowa. It's hard to get young people when they're just getting out and starting their professional lives to go, "Hey, I want to go live in Iowa," compared to go, oceans or mountains
Right.
or
Right.
warm climates. But what a lot of our partners are realizing is we've got a lot of talent here. We do. It's a great place to raise a family in the Cedar Valley. It's a great place to advance a career. And there's some really cool industries that are right here in our backyards that most of our student body doesn't know. It's getting better now because we're
Yeah.
engaging so much with them. But they recognize, like, if I'm a mid-major manufacturing company and I want a mechanical engineer, for example, they were going to Iowa State, Purdue, and they were setting up their tables for career fairs there for their out of their engineering department. And they'd have all these engineering students go in, but then on the left side is Boeing, and on the right side is John Deere and Caterpillar and whoever else you want to roll off as one of the biggest players in the nation. And it's hard to attract their attention to come over here to for instance Crichton. But if they
Yeah.
can get people
Yeah.
in from the community that already have roots here, that already understand it's an awesome community to grow and raise a family in, have their own family here, then figure out how cool their culture is, and they can have a really rewarding lifestyle, both financially and rewarding work, changes the game. You get someone bought in for that, they're going to continue to invest. And that's what's happened with Crichton. They put a project up every semester because, one, they want the product done,
Yeah.
but more importantly, they're testing talent to see who might be a good fit for their company.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard about them in some of the other podcasts where I've heard
Yeah.
Corey talk about Caps and Nate as you speak to them. It's a great connection. It's a great opportunity to grow, right? Homegrown, build it in your own community. I think it's just outstanding. Tell us a little bit about what does this actually look like in your school? Like,
Yeah.
is this a class? Is this, kids sign up for this? Is this after school? Give us kind of the nuts and bolts.
Well, and that's and Scott, this is important because again, when you talk about value, how do you provide value? The way you do that is you lower the cost and lower the time invested and still provide quality experiences, right? So we're very motivated to make sure, you may be listening to this, someone's listening to this and like, okay, but if you're doing a project for that company, then are they basically like four interns that are going to their company? The answer is no, not the way. I mean, if a company wants that to happen, it can. But essentially, what we ask out of a client when they submit a project, we say, here's the expectation. All we ask is that you have a meeting with them, one hour meeting every 2 weeks within a semester, and be responsive to email. And that's all the expectation is. And if we can do that, we can create a really quality experience, a real world engaging experience for our students. And you're asking maybe 8 hours from the client in a 4 month period, which makes it a lot easier to say yes and engage with it. So how do we do that then? Because there's a lot of components that go into this. So first, we're a junior senior program. It's an elective program. It's not required, although it is becoming part of our K-12 experience, and people know about it. It's like before you graduate, you want to take a CAPS experience because the parents have seen the change in their students and how prepared they are to take on life after high school compared to someone that may not have taken it. And so we've got that reputation, which is a good thing. They come out of the high school and we put them in professional environments as cohorts, as I mentioned. So up to 15 in a space. So right now I'm in a co-working space. This is where our business solutions experience operates out of. And so there's 15 of them. We may have 4 or 5 big projects that they're on. And what we do is we train them. When you think of a project, you've got to go interact with the client. So for instance, we do a discovery meeting. We train them to go do that discovery meeting without us. We don't go with them. We're not in the room.
Wow.
So we go along and we'll do a mock discovery meeting. So it's really, which is one of the most important components of the whole project management process, is can you empathize with your client? We do some training on design thinking that's been helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But they learn how to ask the right questions. Why is this important to you? And keep asking why so they can get real to the root cause of the problem. So that way they can better help serve their client and get to the goals and outcomes that they're looking for. We do that training, but then we teach them how to send out an email, which is crazy. I know you would think that they should know that, but a lot don't. We talk
Right.
about CC, BCC, all of the things, etiquette. How do you write a good subject? How do you write a professional email? They send it out requesting a time to meet for their meeting, and then they go by themselves. So they're walking into the business by themselves. They are setting up the meeting. They'll walk into a boardroom often. Wow. There might be 5, 6 different people, and there's 3 of them, and they've got to learn how to do the small talk, how to open and close a meeting, how to ask those questions, and then they've got to summarize and close a meeting. And so once we do that, they come back, they write a summary, they should send an email to the client. This is what we heard you say. Here's what the plan is, laying it out, and here's when we'd like to meet next. And so then we set up the next time, and then we're off. So now our instructor who's overseeing this team is now basically a project manager and is overseeing all these things and making sure that their team is still moving forward and continuing to make progress on the client's project, while dealing with all the team dynamics, right? And this is why we need real world projects, because when you have a real world project, it heightens the expectations and the accountability.
Right.
When you actually have a client that's expecting outcomes and you have to go meet them face to face or on a Zoom if it's remote, and you're accountable for the work that you did or did not do over the past 2 weeks, it's not the A that you're worried about.
Right.
It's making sure they're happy and
Right.
having to go face to face with somebody. And so there's some inherent motivation already for it. So our associates then are like, all right, I want to screw this up. So how do we do this? What are, we got to solve this problem, and working through that, and we got to coordinate and collaborate and communicate effectively so that we don't have an upset client uh, by our next meeting, and we're not wasting their time. So that process goes 2 weeks, goes through a semester. At the end of the semester, there's a lot of things that go on in between there, but
Yeah,
I don't
I
want to
can
get too
imagine.
much of the details. They do a big pitch at the end. Here's our product. It shouldn't be a surprise because they've been meeting periodically, but here's our end result. Here are the things that we did throughout. We heard you say this. This is why we did this, and then we give them a tangible, um, a tangible item or outcome for them to walk away with.
Yeah, what a great process for a student, a high school student to be able to go through, and that real world experience, that experiential based type approach. And so obviously a part of this is a design sprint, right? That you guys
Yep.
that's put together. Talk a little bit about what a design sprint is, how it's a part of the process, how kids engage in that. And so tell us a little bit about that.
So design sprint is just, it's literally what it means. You're going to design something or solve a problem for somebody in a short amount of time, hence the name for sprint. Now, that could be, we've done design sprints that are an hour. I just did one with a sixth grade team that was an hour long. The design sprint could be 3 days long or even 2 weeks. And so there's a variability of what a design sprint is, but essentially it's a short amount of time to design something for a client or solve a problem or provide ideas. Where we got into the design sprint was early on. We send out surveys to our associates. We did this from the very beginning, which is one of the best things we do, is get feedback from our clients, which is our students. So I would highly recommend anybody, if you're developing a program, put in a system where you're getting feedback on a regular basis from the people who you serve, which is your students.
Right.
And we were lucky to do that. We did that early on. And one of the things that was pretty resounding was we were not getting into what CAPS actually was, and the accountability and the intensity of it till it was too late into the semester. And so they were saying, we want a real world experience earlier. And so we said, all right, I mean, if you want to know what CAPS is like and feel it sooner, let's do an actual design sprint. So every semester we kick off by finding a problem or a design project from a business, an organization. They'll reach out to us and say, I'd like to get some ideas or different perspectives because from a different generation about X, Y, or Z. And we say, that sounds like a really good design sprint. We bring them in. So it's typically it's always at the beginning of the semester, but usually either the day after the first day or 2 days after. So we're only 2 or 3 days in, and we're already putting our whole group of student associates in front of a real world business
Wow.
professional, and they have to ask them questions and uh, come up with an idea or a solution to their problem, and then they got to pitch it. So then we get them up on stage. So if you think about this, we're day 2 into a semester, and we've started a 3-day process. So by day 5, they've already they've been put together with a team. They've had to come up with a solution for a client on a real problem, and then they've got to pitch it to a professional panel, and they're giving them feedback on their ideas,
Wow.
on their pitches. So it's a really intense way to start the semester, but it's one of the most impactful things that we have because it really sets the stage and the sense of urgency and the authenticity of the program, because then they start to realize, like, oh, this is no joke. And so it levels everybody up
Yeah. I got it.
for the rest of the semester. It's like a
That
jump
sounds
start,
super
kickstart.
cool. So let me ask you this. So, you got, like you said, 300 total students ish. what kind of preparation? Because as you mentioned, you've done some of this in sixth grade, right? So how how are you with your district? How are you guys kind of embedding some of these concepts, some of this career-related, profession-based approaches in some of the other classrooms or in your schools at an earlier age?
So that sixth grade one is probably our best example at this point, where they basically now have authentic learning time built into their schedule. So they've some actual designated time. Now it's not where we want to be, right? We don't want to just drop what we're doing, traditional education, and then say now we're doing authentic. We want it to
Right.
be authentic all the way through at some level. But this is where we're started, right? We'll take what we get and then we'll build from
Yeah.
there. Again, show the value of it. So they actually are doing they have this time built in all year long. And what we've said is on the authentic learning continuums, you need to have one, what we're calling a gold star experience, where it's actually engaged with a professional, a real world problem in the community. And so one of the things that we're doing just recently is we have a sixth grade team that the library is doing a unit, our local library is doing a unit on growth mindset. And so they are going to go and meet the client, I think in the library, or they're going to, or the librarian's going to come to, this is a public library, not within the school.
Yeah.
So a public librarian's going to either come to the sixth grade team, or they're going to come to the library and basically pitch, this is our event. And we want you to come up with what would you do with those 2 hours around growth mindset? What activities would you develop? Is there some marketing that you would do? What's the marketing that we could do to promote this event for our community? And they're going to develop the whole thing. So each one of the
Wow.
teams will have their own experience. This team might be, I'm interested in marketing and design. You're going to be in charge of that. I'm interested in organization and planning. So they're going to figure that out. I want to come up with the activities. They're going to figure that out. So they all have their own sub project within the large one to fulfill. Well, that's the big culminating gold star experience. But during the year, they're going to be working on developing those durable skills along the way and having in smaller authentic learning experiences. So I did a sixth grade design sprint with them recently, and we just basically said, just to get those design thinking juices flowing on how do you ask questions, how do you ideate,
Yeah.
how do you define the actual problem, the whole 5 steps there. But we did a 1 hour one. So it was just a quick introduction, but they had to come up with, if you could come up with a new tradition for sixth grade for your specific elementary, what would it be? And
Oh, that's
so,
super cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's something that potentially could become a tradition. It's a more simulated one, but it gets them start practicing and thinking. And the side note on this, Scott, it's it's very interesting how quickly even kids in sixth grade can put themselves in a box.
Oh, yeah.
So we go into
Imagine.
ideate phase, and I start off, guys, we want big ideas, bonus points for the biggest, coolest, craziest,
Mm.
graduate or tradition for sixth graders as you graduate out of your elementary, because we have a junior high system. So last
Mm.
year is sixth grade. Come up with something big and crazy. And I couldn't believe how many times I walked by a student and I'd overheard, oh, that's dumb. We can't do that. They'll never let us do that.
Oh, yeah.
Or we don't, who's going to pay for that? We don't have money for that. That's way too expensive. And already they're in this mindset, we can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do
Mhm.
that. So the cool part is we're trying to get that earlier, because we see that a lot with our seniors, juniors and seniors. They're in this box that says, I can't do that. I can't do that. And no matter how much we tell them, like the best ideas in the world is where people tell them there's no way that's possible. And they're like, yeah, that's right, let's go get it. And then you put them on a project, and the first thing they start putting themselves in a box. There's no way we can do that. We can't do that.
Yeah. Wow.
So our goal is to try to do that sooner in sixth grade and help them see it's okay to be risky. It's okay to be creative. You're not going to be out anything if your project doesn't get picked or it falls flat on its face. Give it a shot, because you never know. You may come up with the next greatest thing.
Yeah. How cool that is for kids though, too.
Yeah.
It part, yeah, part. we start with the work that I do. We start all the way down at kindergarten level,
Hmm.
um, around the awareness of real world community and career connectedness, stuff like that. But I've been kind of experimenting a little bit with design sprints with a few teachers that are at that implementation stage, and it's really, really cool when teachers see that change in students and their excitement around something
Yeah.
different.
The
And
level of engagement.
yeah, the relationship between real world and kids can make that connection. So it's that snowball effect really is taking place with a lot of the schools and the teachers I'm working with. Talk real quick though about how do we do this implementation of systems change? What's your advice? I know you said earlier, maybe the slow drip approach, but what are your thoughts about how we can how do we do this? How do we systems change, man?
I think that's a question everybody's been trying to answer, right?
Right.
Uh, boy, this is a philosophical thing. I really believe that unless your hair's on fire, it's really hard to get people to change.
Yeah, good point.
Right. I mean, it's just we're human natures. We want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
We have less and less time to be thoughtful about stuff. If I'm a parent, I'm just trying to. A lot of times, I'm trying to survive day to day with all the activities and
Right.
trying to get my kid through classes. And I mean, a classic way to look at this is if you're like me, Scott, as a parent, and I fall in this trap, I'm better at it because I've seen the effects of it. But parents typically, a lot of times, will just trust the education and let it go through. Like you're getting, and how do I know I can trust it? If my kid's getting A's, then there's not a problem, right?
Right.
Depending on the level of a parent, if my kid gets a B or a C or doesn't get high on the standardized test, then the alarm bells go off. Then I become more engaged. And so when you have that mindset, and that's our mindset, we think of everything in education grades or standardized tests rather than skills and experiences. That's really hard to change that. And that's what I'm saying is it's a drip by drip.
Yeah.
Even when we first started with caps, we had some early adopters, but boy, we had a lot of people naysayers out of the chute. Oh, you're just going to go do make believe stuff. Why would you do that when you could take an AP course and raise your GPA
Yeah.
or and get your ACT higher? So we had to do a lot of storytelling and showing the value of it. And but our biggest advocates now are parents because there's nothing. I shouldn't say nothing more powerful. One of the most powerful things that we're learning about this, and this is probably the thing that I pride. One of the top three things that I pride ourselves about this program. You can't believe how many parents come up and say, my son or daughter has changed because
Wow.
of your program, because of the CAPS program. Whether that's because they've got more confidence in who they are or more confidence of where their next steps are, um, or it's just because they got treated like adults, like colleagues. I mean, they're talking, they come home, they have conversations. Like my son or daughter didn't talk to me. I was hardly ever talking to him. Now he comes home, looks me in the eye. We sit around the table, we talk about his or her future and what that could look like. And they're excited to talk about the things that they're doing in caps and who they ran into. I ran into the CEO. I sat down with the mom. I sat down with the CEO of this company. And you can't believe, that we got this project we're working on and we're going to help them do this. And guess what? You're going to be able to see it on Main Street because it's coming up in 2 months. And then they get to take their parents out and they're walking down and the parent gets to look up and see like, oh, you guys designed that banner? Yeah. And then the
Yeah.
CEO comes over and like, yeah, that's the guy who worked. Mom, this is the CEO of, and then they
Wow.
start talking and it's like, it's completely different. It's this ecosystem of education within a community and it can feed itself. But to your point, it takes time to do that. It's hard to get messages out there in a very noisy world. Um,
Mm.
and so it's this drip and advocate and promote in the right channels. And then then we got to get into the whole legislative thing.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
ultimately that's where the money comes, that's where the requirements come, and that takes a while. And those are the ones where it's like you have to, now it's not just the stories. Now you have to have the data. And then you got to have the right data. One thing our state legislators are, tell me how your program's keeping our talent here in Iowa.
Yeah.
And then if we can start showing that by the surveys after they've left our program and somehow, correlate that because we were in our community and with businesses, and compared to people that weren't in CAPS, that weren't in the community and getting into our businesses, is there a higher return rate to Iowa to work? If the answer is yes, well, now there's an economic component to this
Right.
that state legislators are like, well, not only are they getting these really good durable skills, but these kids are figuring out how they can have rewarding and be financially sound lives within the state. Well, then you start getting people to say, this is something we need to do more of.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then there's the agency, student agency, giving our students opportunity to decide where they want to have their impact and where they want to go. So there's not a silver bullet, because if there was, we'd already be there. It's consistent messaging and consistently showing positive outcomes that people
Mhm.
care about.
Yeah, it is the right work to do,
For sure.
for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much obvious behind that. I love how you talk about the testimonials, the ability to see real world application have real world results. And that's what our educational system should be about, bottom line. And
Yep.
so I really applaud you guys for what you're doing. And again, I'm really excited that we've been able to meet. Let me talk real quick about because this is recorded, it's going to go out to our listeners. Talk a little bit about our unconference that we're having in April. I'm excited to have the CAPS program involved and having you involved with Nate. I think it's an opportunity. I'm hoping that we're able to showcase the great work that CAPS is all about, but bring some of that real world, the real application opportunity to that conference where people can see it in action. A lot of the great things you've talked about here is what we got to replicate down over those 2 days, 2.5 days, to be able to get people to see the need to change, but the ability and how to change, I think, is what we want to have come out of that. So I'm really excited to have you guys involved. We're gaining some great momentum with it. And part of the webcast here is to kind of promote, who's going to be there and what it's going to be about. So I really appreciate it. Let me ask you this one final question. We like to ask everybody that we, have on as guests. Our tagline is the future is clear. Teach like it's 2045. So what do you feel education is going to be, or what it should be maybe in the year 2045? I know I'll probably be retired by then, I'm hoping, but
Now I'm trying to figure out what society is going to be in 2 years.
right.
Here's what I do know, and this is why I am so passionate about this type of work. There's two things that I think our students are going to need to be equipped to leave. And I think about my own three boys,
Yeah.
and as a father, how do I position them best to be successful and be able to achieve whatever they want to achieve, right? And I think of two things that are very important, and that's where our mission statement is: preparing all students for their purpose. And that preparation piece is that development of those durable skills.
Yeah.
Again, communication, problem solving, resilient, adaptability, initiative, trustworthy. Those are the things, those are the skills as I look at a technological age where things are advancing so fast. Uh, and everything's being automated, and AI, the web. Well, the web feels almost ancient at this point with AI and everything else going on. I think of those skills that have made us human, uniquely human, and have been important throughout our whole life are even more important now.
Yeah.
So you have these skills that are universal, that all of our students are going to need, or all our children or kids are going to need to be successful, whether it's in work or whether in life. That we want to make sure that we're developing. So that's part of it. The other thing I think is important, and this is the second part. I didn't spend a ton about purpose, but that purpose piece, we do a thing where we take every student and we work on help them figure out what is it they're passionate about, what are they skilled at, and what type of work is out there for them. I think work is a word that we use a lot more now than we do career, just because things are changing so rapidly and we don't know what the careers are going to look like, but we do know what work in general
Right.
someone might like to do, right? And so I think we need to spend more time helping them figure out what type of work is out there that they can live a rewarding and sustainable lifestyle that they want. And we need to do that before they go into college for various reasons, or go into their next steps, whether that's military or work. Um, so we spent a ton of time on that career and work adventure, along with developing those durable skills. So if you're saying, hey, in 2045, where are we at? I believe we have to have the foundational components of technical skills and basic skills. We have to have that. I'm not always convinced that we have to get every single kid to a certain level of mathematics before we can say we're a successful school district. I
Right.
do think, though, they have to be able to have those durable skills, and they have to, we want them to have a sense of purpose when they're leaving the high school. So if I was looking at 2045, I would look at it as an education where it's so blended within our community that we've created this awesome ecosystem where we're all not only committed to developing our kids, but also are having this symbiotic relationship where we're all getting value out of it, that we stay engaged with it. So it's very blurred lines that you don't know where education begins and work ends. And so if you're out in the community and I can't tell if this is someone that's working
Right.
for some other company, or if they're part of the school system, or a combination of both. I feel like that's the future of where we're headed, because education is going to have to keep up with technology. And to do that, we're going to need our business partners who are naturally trying to stay competitive. So that way our students are engaging with what's most relevant now.
Yeah, it's well said. I mean, our footprint will look different. That's for sure. And you're a great father. I can sense that. Great advice. Three boys. My mom. I got two brothers, so my mom and my dad lived with three boys themselves. So we had a lot of fun. I can only imagine. Hey, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, I think the best way, just so you don't have a long email, Weekman's a longer name to spell it out, but I would go to cfcaps.org, and you can go in there. You'll learn more about our program and all the cool things that are happening. But also, there's a contact information there that it'll route themselves to me.
Perfect. Well, Ethan, I appreciate you joining us today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to get to know you. I'm looking forward to a continued relationship with you and the CAPS program. Thanks again for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Scott.
You bet. And as we depart, remember, the future is clear. Take care, everybody.